How's it going, Croasdaile people? It's good to hear you and see you today. We've got two great guys who are going to be our speakers today. The first one's Hank Scherich. You may or may not know him. He lives up in the homestead, second floor. But anyway, Hank, welcome to Croasdaile Podcast. And I have two or three questions. Number one, we're changing questions. Now the question is very simple. Can you tell me about your early life up to high school or through high school, where you lived and all that stuff?
Yes. I remember it all very well.
Your memories must be really good.
Yeah, I grew up in western Kansas, and my parents, my father and mother were workers. They worked in in agricultural industry and farming, cattlemen. They didn't own anything, but they worked for large corporations that owned a lot of land. My dad worked first as an employee, and that's where I was born, when he worked at the Davis Ranch. And the Davis Ranch at that time covered 35,000 acres in southwest Kansas. And then, so after I was born, my mom and dad lived there for 5 years, and then they moved to a smaller ranch called the Merrill Ranch. And the Merrill Ranch was one county over, 12 miles away, and it was only 18,000 acres. And so we were in rural western Kansas, and my dad worked at that as a hand, and the man who was the foreman, and they had leaders there because they had several employees, and the foreman of this place left because he bought a ranch or farm of his own, and the owners of the ranch wanted to know if my dad would like to take over and be the foreman. And so my dad did that, and he took over in 1945. And my family, my dad ran the place until he retired. Then my brother took it over and ran as a foreman till 2016. Really? So we've had a long history out there in southwest Kansas.
Good.
All right.
We're ready. Okay, part two of your life.
Okay.
After high school and on up, and this is the long part, on up to when you retired, if you didn't retire. Okay, all that in there.
That's a long story. All right, well, I should point out one other thing. My first year of school was at a one-room country school out there, and I was the only first grader. And then when we moved to the other ranch, I began riding a bus. I have one brother who's just a year younger than I am, and so we rode a bus 22 miles to the closest town for us to go to elementary, and then obviously we stayed all the way through high school out there in western Kansas. And so after graduating from high school, there was 9 in my high school graduating class.
Whoa!
And my parents always told my brother and I, we want you boys to go to college. We don't want you to have to work as hard as we've had to work. So their answer to that was for us to go to college. And so we went to college. I went to a small college in eastern Kansas. It's in the town of Ottawa. It's named Ottawa University. And at the time had about 600 total students in Ottawa University. We went there. We were also members of a Baptist church out there in Comanche County, and the Baptist had Ottawa University was associated with the American Baptist faith, and so my parents thought that my brother and I would be nice to go to Ottawa University because it was a good Christian school, and there wouldn't be a lot of drinking and partying going on. We won't talk about whether there was or not. But,
Thank you.
but that's where we went to college as an undergraduate, and then after I finished college, I signed on as a teacher in a high school, and so I taught high school in a town called Wakefield, Kansas, which is up in the northeast part of the state. And Wakefield was not a large city or town. I think our graduating class there had around 20 students in it, but not many people live in Kansas, so that wasn't surprising. So anyway, I taught school in Wakefield, Kansas for 4 years. And this is a long story, but maybe it'll be interesting enough. You remember back in those days, in the early 1960s, the Sputnik had gone up, and the Russians were they're taking us over. They're way ahead of us in science and industry, and so the government began funding scholarships for people to go on for additional training, most especially in science and mathematics, but they also had, the government thought it was necessary to have guidance counselors in high schools that would help funnel promising students into mathematics or science. And so I went not in mathematics or science, but I went at a scholarship to go and get a master's degree in guidance and counseling. And I did that.
Good.
I went back to Kansas after finishing my 1 year fellowship sponsored by the government, and I did that at the University of Illinois in Champaign, Illinois. I went back to Kansas and was a guidance counselor in a public high school there for 2 years, and then I got a call from one of the guys I was in graduate school with, and he said, "I'm at Southern Illinois University in Croasdaile, Illinois now, and he said, we have some fellowships available here at the university, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in coming down to Southern Illinois University and working on your doctorate." You don't hardly refuse.
No, you don't.
And so then I moved from Junction City, Kansas to Carbondale, Illinois, Southern Illinois University, and spent a lot of time there. Finally, after a number of years, because I did a lot of fellowships, I did a lot of working on the side in addition to going to classes, but they eventually let me out after I wrote a dissertation, did some research and so on like that. So I ended up with a PhD in educational statistics, and so that got me through. How old am I now? 31, something like that.
That's close.
Something like that. And And so anyway, that's my educational background. One of the important things about Southern Illinois University in my life was that while I was there, I met a young lady at the university. She actually, I've said often that that's the reason I ended up with a degree, was she was the chief assistant to the chair of the Department of Guidance and Educational Psychology. And I ended up marrying Linda.
There you go.
There at Southern Illinois University. I met her at Southern Illinois University. And so that's when Linda and I paired up, and we're 55 years later still very happy together. So that gets us pretty far along. How much more do we need in the background?
That's it.
I mean, I worked for, after that, I worked for Houghton Mifflin, a book publishing company. We lived in Boston for a while. We moved back and worked for another company in Iowa City, Iowa, a testing company there, did educational testing. And then that's where we left and moved to Durham, North Carolina, when I took a job with another testing company here in Durham, North Carolina. And that was back in 1977.
Okay.
So that's
and then
that's the early background.
Now you've retired have you retired from Measurement Inc.?
Yes. I was the founder. I worked for another testing company here, and then left that company and went out on my own, and fortunately built a company with a niche in educational testing, and that company is still in existence. I'm still the primary shareholder, but I will tell you that I don't do any work.
Good job.
They ask me to sign papers every once in a while, and they're still doing very well and all, and I have an office downtown, by the way.
Way to go! You got an office.
So anyway,
okay,
that's where we are now.
What caused you and your wife to move to Croasdaile?
We got old.
That's the first good reason I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, well, we owned our first house that we owned in Durham was right over by the Watts Hospital, which was a school of science and math. Mm-hmm. When we moved here, we bought a house on Woodrow Street, which is 1 block from the School of Science and Math. And after we lived there for a few years, got the company going, we bought a house on Barrington Place, which is out in West Durham, west edge of Durham, and we lived in Barrington Place for 40 years or so before we moved here.
Okay.
So the reason that we moved here, obviously, my wife worked at Duke University and retired from Duke University. So she, the reason we moved here, and is we were familiar with Croasdaile Village. The architect who did most of our buildings, renovations and stuff in downtown, was named Tim Hoke. And Tim Hoke was an architect, and his offices were over here in the Silo building.
Yes, down the street.
And so we were out here considerably with meeting with Tim Hoke on architectural issues and so on like that. So we were familiar with Croasdaile, and we liked the openness. Remember, I was a farm boy. I was an old rancher, and the fact that we got out here in a little bit of throwback to history and time, it was nice. And when my wife had to have both knees replaced in early 2017 or 2015, somewhere in there, I've forgotten. And then a couple of years later, she had to have both hips replaced. When she got her hips replaced, our house out on Barrington Place in West Durham was a 2-story home, and all the bedrooms were upstairs. The family room was a half flight down from the main floor, so we just had too many stair steps, too much house for my wife to navigate in, and so it was a very logical move. We actually had been thinking ahead and had put in a deposit over here in Croasdaile. And when we called them in 22, I think it was, said we probably called in 21 and said we're interested in moving into Croasdaile Village. They looked at our records and said, "Oh, you made your deposit several years ago, so you're high on the list. When would you like to move?" We said yesterday.
There you go.
No, but we actually from the time we told them that we were ready to move until we moved, it was probably 6 months, and so we got in here quickly and we were very happy for getting here. We really didn't even look at any other. I mean, we're familiar with.
Right.
We've lived here for 40 years. We're familiar with other options, but we just pretty well knew this is where we wanted to be, and so we didn't take us long to get in here. We're very happy we did.
Great. Well, Hank, thank you for stopping by, and thanks for all the information. Now I know about you, and now I know why I had a hard time administrating some of those measurement ink tests. Thank you, everybody.